Welcome to the Leaders in Housing Counseling call. We've got a crowded agenda today, but a high quality one, so I'm very pleased. So we're going to dive right in. We're going to do quick updates on federal funding on the Brian Montgomery nomination, which a lot of developments moving forward, moving backward. It's pretty crazy. And then we'll have the Homekeeper Client Management System, a new CMS that's, or maybe not so new, it's actually in place now that people want to know about. And then we'll do our student loans update. The second half of the call will be devoted to that, and we got a lot of good information there. And we'll make a quick plug on joining NHRC, and we'll move on. So quickly, let's jump in, Matthew, right away. So federal funding 2019, what's happening?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, so things are actually moving along by congressional standards relatively quickly. So the House they expect they're on recess this week, but what we're hearing is that they hope to be, for the subcommittee, the THUD subcommittee, to be marking up their appropriations bill as early as next week. And folks who've been through it before know that the subcommittee markup is essentially a formality, generally moves just on a voice vote, and then at the committee is where any actual real marking up would be. So that could be happening as soon as the following week, so 2 weeks out from now. So that's moving along pretty quickly. The thing I did want to mention, there is a hearing, I guess last Wednesday, where Dana Wade testified for the THUD subcommittee on the administration's HUD requests. The thing that was notable, it was actually a really fantastic hearing for housing counseling. Housing counseling just kept being raised and again by a number of different members. Initially, it was raised by Dana Wade herself when Chairman Diaz-Balart asked about, well, I won't go into detail because I'll get off the rails, but she brought up counseling as a potential solution for seniors and defaults on HECM loans, kind of pushing counseling as a potential way to try to curb that. Then Congressman Price in his opening remarks, and then in his questions, it's David Price from North Carolina, who's the Democratic ranking member, made a point of bringing up counseling several times. Congressman Young, who folks will remember, David Young from Iowa, folks remember that we had done a meeting with him probably a month or so ago, and with Congressman Dent, where we had essentially worked with Congressman Dent and asked him to kind of hand over the reins of advocating for counseling on the THUD subcommittee to Congressman Young. Congressman Young was, said he was happy to have been asked, and was very happy with the meeting. So he made a point of bringing up counseling and kind of pushing back on the administration's request, which if folks don't remember, they would cut. The administration request was for 45 or 47, I forget which. Basically, they asked for, they asked for less than the current level of 55. So he pushed back on that. Congressman Valadao had really specific questions, and Young and Valadao are both Republicans. Had very specific questions. His district is really rural in the Central Valley of California, very agricultural, and he had a few very specific questions about the challenges of providing counseling in rural areas. Congressman Dent joined the meeting late, but he obviously did a plug for counseling and pushed back on the administration's request. So all in all, it was just a very positive hearing, particularly to have so many Republicans just on their own, bringing up counseling and making the case for it. So I was very encouraged by that.
It was amazing. We were a very small program, and yet we came up repeatedly. And they quoted a letter too. Which letter was that, Matthew?
They did, yeah. I forgot to mention that. Two of the members, and I forget who they were, but I can send an email following up. But they were very clearly using the language that we used in our sign-on letter originally that we circulated, asking members to support $65 million for housing counseling.
So this is the letter that you signed on to that people are using as the script for the questioning. This really works. So just just to underline, it really helps to participate in all this stuff. Thanks so much.
Yeah, it was very encouraging. It felt like, we've been, for years now really focusing our attention largely on Republicans in the House, and it feels like we're kind of turning the corner where there's just this kind of widespread support that it felt like a very positive hearing. So wanted to let folks know that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, actually, you know what? I take that back. I think that was not public information, so I'm not gonna share that at the moment, but we'll share that on a future update. So I think that's all I have to say on the federal funding. Bruce, do you want to add anything?
No, that's good. We got it.
All right, thank you. Sorry about that. And then quickly on the Brian Montgomery nomination for FHA commissioner. So I think this is a new development since our last call 2 weeks ago, but very soon after that, if Senator Duckworth from Illinois announced, who's a Democrat from Illinois, announced that she was going to put basically a blanket hold on all HUD nominees. And I'm not going to get into the backstory, but it's all related to kind of HUD's role in closing public housing buildings in southern Illinois, and Senator Duckworth and Durbin have been trying to get information from HUD on basically asking HUD for transparency on how they went about making that decision, and just trying to get information from HUD. HUD has been slow, at least, to get that to them. So she, finally said, okay, until we get this information, I'm putting a hold on all HUD nominees. I think we understand her frustration and using, Democrats are in the minority and don't have a ton of leverage, and that's one spot that they do have some leverage is to hold nominees. So I think we understand them, her office using their power in that way. It did kind of throw a wrinkle in our efforts. We've been trying to work with Republican and Democratic offices to try to move forward the Brian Montgomery nomination. It seems like Senator Duckworth's office is working with HUD, and we're hopeful that HUD will be able to comply with the request in the pretty short term, in which case we'll kind of be able to revamp our efforts to move that forward. Hopefully folks have seen we're recirculating a sign-on letter that had originally been sent in December by NAR, the realtors. That was signed by 44 or 45 groups. It was a mix of industry groups and advocates, mostly national groups. We've been circulating it on the leaders list, and I'll recirculate again today, trying to add on local groups, and particularly folks in kind of key states, so Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Idaho for Senator Crapo, South Carolina, Kentucky, trying to get the kind of key states well represented. Senator Scott's office has been extremely helpful, and we spoke with them just after our last leaders call, and they're very motivated. They said basically we're as frustrated as you are that this hasn't gone, and we're willing to do anything that we can to move it forward. It was actually their suggestion to try to move forward the letter, and so when we wrap that up, so the deadline we have for sign-ons is this coming Monday at noon. It does seem that if the Duckworth hold is still in place, we may extend it out. It doesn't make a lot of sense to be submitting the letter while the hold is still on. So if folks could sign on to that letter, it would be extremely helpful. And then Senator Scott's office is going to really amplify it to the key offices and really try to use that letter as a way to move the nomination forward. And they were pretty explicit that was the best thing we could do to try to move it forward. So if folks haven't signed on to the letter, we would appreciate it. I'll circulate it after the call along with the link to sign on.
Good, yeah. So we're really quite on top of these things. Obviously, the Brian Montgomery nomination will have a big impact on our work, and if we can actually get him in place, we've worked with him in the past. There's a quick heads up that it might be the letter gets reworded to give it a kind of a fresh spin. the realtors have raised that issue. I think that'd be fine with us. We'll certainly recirculate it. Anybody who's signed it will have a chance to opt out if they want. I can't imagine this would change anybody's opinion. I think they felt more they wanted to update it so that it had a fresh, was a fresh document that might get some more attention. But all good. So we're going to move right on to our first guests here. And as you know, one of the great struggles in our work has been to have a good, clean operating system for doing client management. And we've had a few presented already, and here's one that's actually done by Grounded Solutions called Homekeeper, and it's really developed by the groups that are working on shared equity and community land trust projects, but there are a number of housing counseling agencies that are currently using it, so it's available now. And we've got Tiffany Ang and Valerie Rogers to present. Oh, and pictures as well. Great. And so welcome, Tiffany and Valerie.
Hi, everyone. I'm assuming
Great.
You can hear me.
Yep.
I'm Tiffany Yang, and I'm the Homekeeper Program Director. I'm here with my colleague Valerie Rogers, our Marketing and Support Specialist, and we're calling in from Oakland, California, where we work. Thanks, Bruce, for inviting us here today to talk about Homekeeper. Next slide. So we work for Grounded Solutions Network. We're a national member-based nonprofit. We cultivate communities, equitable, inclusive, and rich in opportunity by advancing affordable housing solutions that last for generations. So Homekeeper is just one of our programs at Grounded Solutions. We have state and technical assistance programs, grant programs, an annual conference. If you're interested in learning more about land trusts or inclusive communities and policies, you can access more resources on our website at groundedsolutions.org. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to invite my capacity building or state and local policy colleagues to a future call to talk more about land trusts or shared equity, housing, all timely topics that likely intersect with your work. Just let Bruce or Matthew know. Next slide. Homekeeper is our online client management system we built with folks like you to make your jobs easier and your programs better. So we've been generously supported by the Ford Foundation, the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, the Salesforce Foundation, and more recently the Wells Fargo Housing Foundation, just to name a few. Next slide. So Homekeeper is built on the powerful cloud-based Salesforce platform, which you may have heard about. What does that mean? If you haven't, just imagine Salesforce is sort of like your smartphone. So there's standard features like contacts and calendars and a global search and the ability to store and attach files to your records. So Homekeeper is an app on Salesforce, like an app on your phone. It's available on the Salesforce App Exchange, the online app store, and it's built specifically to help programs manage affordable home ownership programs and housing counseling programs. You just need a web browser and an internet. Next. Some of the reasons our users have loved working with Homekeeper and Salesforce is that you can create your own reports and dashboards or edit hours that we provide. You can make customizations like adding fields and changing layouts pretty easily, and you can connect other apps to enhance your work. So for example, there are apps to pull credit reports or manage grants or volunteers, or even connect to online web forms so the data comes into your system. Next slide, a bit of Homekeeper history. So back in 2010, I first started working with 3 community land trusts, all housing counseling agencies, to build Homekeeper from the ground up with support from the Ford Foundation. And our first public version was released in 2012. It tracked home ownership and housing counseling activities, and it generated the now retired version of the 9902 report. But it wasn't sending data to HUD directly, and our users really pushed us to move in that direction. It took a while, a few years, a few updates, a few more grants to transition to the latest version of 9902, and we finally got HUD approved towards the end of 2016. And we spent most of last year with our early adopters, testing our features and sort of refining it. So our early adopters have been pretty happy with Homekeeper. They've really encouraged us to tell more counselors and advisors. So this year, 2018, we now have the confidence and capacity to share our housing counseling features with others like you. So Homekeeper today we work with a wide range of organizations and programs, including housing counseling agencies and homeownership programs, nonprofits, and we even work with a few city housing departments running inclusionary housing programs. So organizations are typically managing more than just one type of housing counseling or homeownership program. So we really built Homekeeper to allow you to standardize management of all of your different housing programs in Salesforce, so that you have the flexibility to segment your information and your layouts for each program. Next slide. Our housing counseling features include everything you'd probably expect from a CMS, and no better than me. Include workshop management, case management, HUD reporting, caseload management, and counselor information and training. So all of the nuts and bolts of what you folks do every day. On the home ownership slide, next slide. On the home ownership side, we have more expansive features and includes the full life cycle of home ownership. So managing a whole property portfolio with subsidies. It follows applicants through intake and eligibility, including like the whole purchase transaction workflow. It also follows them through post-purchase support and monitoring and resale tracking. So the cycle can start all over again. Lastly, Homekeeper aggregates a subset of the data from our home ownership users, next slide, into the Homekeeper National Data Hub, which we also built and manage. It's an online dashboard that shows a public report of aggregated data from programs that we work with, and then the home ownership programs get individual benchmark reports comparing their progress and outcomes to their peers. So that's a bit of the background of Homekeeper. At this point, I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague Valerie. She will show you a little more detail and give you a sneak peek of some of the features that our users like the most.
Thank you, Tiffany, for the background. I'm Valerie, and I work with the groups that are interested in getting our Homekeeper app. And I myself am a former Homekeeper user, so I've been sitting in the same seat as many groups that are looking at it. I'd love to show everybody around some of our features that we've added to our program to make it easier for housing counselors to do their work. So as the screen you're looking at right now shows you that with our program, you're able to quickly register individuals for group sessions in Salesforce, as well as capture that HUD required information that you need to be able to report. Next slide. You are also able to quickly and easily register clients for one-on-one meetings by topic, and are able to have clients with multiple open topics at once, which is a little bit different than some of the older systems. We use a function in Salesforce called the Quick Action, which makes it a lot easier to add information on your clients without taking your counselors to multiple screens to input the information. Next slide. We also have a quick action where you can enter HUD required data fields in one place, as well as set defaults for fields that you always answer the same way. For example, no to farm worker, no to Collinus, for example. With these default field entries created for your staff, it allows your counselors to complete the information with a lot less clicks. Next slide. Homekeeper also makes it easy to certify incomes, assets, and debts regardless of the programs your clients are in. The program also includes formula fields, which will run the AMI for you and let you know how much the client can afford in a monthly mortgage payment. Next slide. If you have clients that are returning for additional services at a later date and their demographics change due to a change in household or income, Homekeeper also allows you to clone their original client file to update what you need to while still keeping that information on the original client file for tracking purposes. That way you don't have to start from scratch with clients that are coming back in for new services, and the files can still be connected. Next slide. On the client service file, you can also see a snapshot of the client's financial health. Homekeeper allows you to track client financial information, including itemized incomes, assets, and debts, as well as any funding a client might be applying for as part of their housing counseling journey. Next slide. We know that counselors are always the most important staff person when using our program for HUD 9902 reporting. So we did create a counselor homepage, which allows you to see your workload and current client information all in one place. You can now also track all of your client certifications in one place so that when you have a HUD audit, you're not having all of your staff scrambling and running around to figuring out what certification classes people went to over the course of the year. Next slide. Homekeeper also allows counselors to see which clients you are reporting to HUD and decide which ones you need to report. We found often that counseling and homeownership programs have programs that are not eligible for HUD reporting credit. So we did want to create the flexibility for you to be able to track clients, but not necessarily have to be able to report them to HUD. Next slide. For our counselor screen, you'll also be able to see the amount of days since you last spoke with clients, which can enable you to follow up with clients that are hitting that 2-month mark, that 2-month follow-up mark, and then also close out clients who you might not have heard back from for over 6 months, ensuring that you're reaching out to clients and none of them are falling through the cracks. Next slide. This is my favorite feature of our system. It is our HUD completeness prompts. On many of our page layouts, we include a prompt to let you know if any of the HUD required fields are missing, so that at every stage of the data entry process, you'll know if you are missing things. You can then quickly click into any file that might be missing information to address the data completeness, so that by the time you are submitting your quarterly reports, everything looks perfect. Next slide. And then also, we wanted to make it so that counselors could also update multiple files at one time. So we use the functionality in Salesforce called list views, so that you can update things like the status of a class registration. So in this example, we're showing you how we're able to update 8 clients that registered for our group classes. Next slide. And change all of those 8 selected records from registered to attendance with the click of a button. Next slide. And then you can also see how these recent clients now show up as attended for your classes. So this is a really great way to be able to update things very quickly across multiple records. Next slide. Homekeeper out of the box also includes dashboards that allow you to see breakouts by client demographics, which makes it easier for your additional staff beyond your housing counselors to be able to report on those demographics for things like funding reports or the annual reports you might have to do. Next slide. You can also see what topics most clients are coming to visit you for and what kinds of impacts you're providing on clients' lives. In addition to these dashboards that we have shown you today, we also have other dashboards which show very visually rich information on how your program is doing. All the dashboards in Homekeeper can be customized as well as emailed to users based on whatever schedule you choose. This is great if your boss might ask you questions often and ask you the same questions. You can create dashboards to then send to them weekly and monthly so that they can get that information very quickly without having to ask you every week. Next slide. So in addition to all the features that we have, we really include a robust support program to ensure that our users are successful. We have a user support forum where we write up resources to questions that we get asked often, and also include visual how-tos for many topics, including how to create reports and dashboards, how to create custom fields, how to update page layouts, and more. Next slide. So we also, sorry, it looks like it's gone a couple of slides ahead. Perfect. So we also host monthly office hours where you can get questions answered, as well as we have monthly new user Q&As where your staff can learn the Homekeeper ropes. Next slide. I know we went through a lot of these features really quickly today, so if you're interested in learning a little bit more, we can always do a tailored demo. So you can just let us know. Our email is included as well. We also have a public demo on May 16th and an e-learning service coming up in June. And then lastly, for those of you that feel like Homekeeper might be a good fit for your organization, we also have a few steps on how to join Homekeeper. We do have an application process, which is pretty quick. And then our annual fees for Homekeeper include 2 fees, a one-time onboarding fee, which covers installation, setup, and training. We also have an annual fee, which covers upgrades to Homekeeper and ongoing support. If you decide to move forward with Homekeeper, our staff will work to configure, install, and train your staff on how to use the program. I'm now going to pass it on to Tiffany, and she's going to talk a little bit more about our users and then open everything up for questions.
Super. Well, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm excited to be able to share all of this with you. Certainly, if any of it seems like something you folks would be interested in, do let us know. We look forward to sharing Homekeeper with more users. And actually, now's a really good time to start planning for the next fiscal year. October 1st will be here before we know it. It's actually the most logical time to switch. You can switch other times, but that's the most logical time. So yeah, that's it. If
Are
there
y'all
are any
ready
other
for some questions?
Happy to take them. Yeah.
All right. Someone said great presentation and asked if Homekeeper is capable of reporting to NeighborWorks. If so, how many NeighborWorks organizations are using Homekeeper?
We have a handful of NeighborWorks organizations that use Homekeeper, and some from the very beginning. And we have 3 that are reporting to NeighborWorks from Homekeeper Housing Counseling Organizations. So we built what we call a reporting pathway. It means that they've worked with a consultant who is actually another Homekeeper user from a NeighborWorks organization, who's set it up a way for housing counseling NeighborWorks organizations to make the customization. So it's not out of the box, because not everyone is a NeighborWorks organization, but for those folks, they've been able to get what they need to do the quarterly reporting. But I would say in general, they're reporting the housing counseling homeownership information, not all of everything that goes to NeighborWorks quarterly.
Great. Is there any limit on the number of users for Homekeeper?
If that's a price question, no. So we have a one-time, like the site license is for everybody at your organization, no matter how many users you want to add. Salesforce allows each 501c3 to have 10 free at no cost licenses, and after that, Salesforce charges for each additional individual user. I think it's something like 74% off the market value, though. It's deeply discounted for nonprofits.
Okay, and you may have just covered this, but do you need to have Salesforce as well, or is there an additional fee for Salesforce, or is the $3,500 startup and annual cost cover the Salesforce cost?
Yeah, I'm going to let Valerie answer that one.
So you would need to get Salesforce to use our program, but part of our onboarding process, if you don't already have Salesforce, is we help you with the application process to apply for those 10 free licenses. And when you get Salesforce, you also get access to their free app as well, which includes donation and volunteer tracking. So you would get the Salesforce side of things for free. Our app just has a onboarding and an annual fee.
Great. Can Homekeeper do cumulative 9902 reports for multiple quarters, is the question.
I'm not. So each quarterly report in 9902 report is cumulative. So even though they call it your quarter 3 report, it has to include quarter 1 and quarter 2. So if that's what the question is referring to, yes. And that's why it's most logical to switch it at the beginning of a new fiscal year, although you could do a manual entry over the bridging years that you're transitioning.
Okay.
If you have more questions, I'd be happy to get into the weeds with anyone.
I think
but
that,
yes,
that
the
answered it.
9902 report is cumulative.
Someone asked if you could demo the 9902 submission process. I think I'm just going to have them reach out to you directly. Does that sound right?
Yes, we would be happy to demo that auto magic whenever you reach out to Valerie.
All right. Can Homekeeper send letters to customers via email directly from the system?
Yeah, you can set up with Salesforce. It has the functionality to be able to create mail merges as well as templated emails. So if you're following up with clients and sending things like notes from your last call, you can update and create templates so that as you're following up with those clients, it's sending them kind of very similar kind of emails, which you can then tailor to the specific client.
And someone asked, are they able to migrate client data from our current CMS system, or CMS?
So that's a great question, and one I get asked a lot. Well, a lot of the systems that are currently in place, like CounselorMax, make it really hard to pull the information out. We can do some quick data migration if you can pull things like your client information, contacts into spreadsheets, and if you have a list of your group sessions already, those are things that we can import. But based on the way the other systems are set up, it's been really, that's also why we're suggesting people start at the beginning of the year, so because many of our users are starting fresh with Homekeeper.
Great. Somebody asked about pricing options for intermediaries. I think I'm going to also refer them directly to you, unless you want to get into that now.
That would be great. We actually have a new funding source to work directly with intermediaries. Be happy to share more. Just reach out to me.
Great. And somebody asked which intermediaries are using HomeKeeper now?
Which intermediaries? We don't have an intermediary. Vermont Housing Conservation Board is a statewide funding source. So most of the community land trusts, many of which are housing counseling agencies, are using HomeKeeper. So yeah, I guess we have one, Vermont Housing Conservation Board.
Great. And somebody asked if we can circulate the slides. Is that fine?
Yeah, I can share a PDF version that doesn't have these, that's formatted slightly better.
Great, thank you. And then the last question, I think you kind of covered this, but if you could just quickly go over the cost for Salesforce.
Definitely. So Salesforce for nonprofits is free for the first 10 users. So as a platform, you would get it for free. If you have that 11th user, they do charge a price per license, and it's very discounted. So for the platform itself, it's free. For HomeKeeper, which is our app, there is an onboarding cost of $2,500 for the first year and an annual cost of $1,000. So as a platform for Salesforce, they really love nonprofits, and that's why they do want to provide their platform for free.
Great. We had a couple more questions trickle in. Those would be the last couple. Someone asked, they're already using Salesforce. Is it pretty seamless for them to kind of migrate the information in?
Yes, it does save us a couple of steps. So if you already have Salesforce, we can get you up and running a little bit quicker. With Salesforce, if you are applying for licenses, it's a new org, it does take a week or two. So you would save a week or two on the onboarding process if you already have Salesforce.
Great. And then the last question, someone asked if for technical assistance, do they have to buy blocks of time, or how does technical assistance work?
No, that annual price you pay does cover the ongoing support and technical assistance, and we do have those monthly office hours where you can drop in, and a ticketing system where if you have questions, we try to answer those pretty quickly.
And I just to add as a final thought, we do have one more person on our team, Cheryl. We have a full-time support and training specialist who is routinely answering questions and writing up articles for our support forum.
Great. Well, thank you so much, team. That's great. We're going to move on, but everybody has the contact information. We'll circulate the version of the slides as soon as we get the PDF version. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you all.
Great. Let's move on to our friends Natalia Abrams and Cody Hunanian from Student Debt Crisis. They were part of the team, but they were really the driving force on the trainings we did over 2 or 3 years ago that were very helpful, I think, to many of you getting into the student loan debt counseling world. And so we thought it'd be timely to have an update, given that there's been changes in the administration, and we've been seeing some experience of how the programs are performing. So with that, Natalia and Cody, welcome, and thanks so much for helping us figure this all out.
Great. Thanks so much, Bruce, and thank you for having us. I'm going to actually pass it to Cody, who's going to kick us off on just a little bit of background and some new home regulations.
Thank you, Natalia. And again, thank you, Bruce, for having us today. When we hosted our last series of workshops with you all at the NHRC, we were calling for some changes to policies that were challenges to student loan borrowers accessing a mortgage. And a lot of it was based around their repayment plans. So I think we've got some good news to report, and hopefully I can cover those as accurately as possible. Of course, at Student Debt Crisis, we focus on student loan policies. So I'm going to try to give you the information directly from the sources. But Bruce, feel free to plug in. And of course, I'll share links with you all so you can access this information directly. So just a quick snapshot of, how student loans are impacting folks who are looking to own a home. We've seen some really startling reports from the National Association of Realtors, as well as the Federal Reserve Bank. And some of the data that we're seeing really sends home the message that student debt is one of the driving factors that's preventing young people from owning a home. We're hearing from the National Association of Realtors that 80% of millennials say their student loans are preventing them from purchasing a home. That is huge. That is absolutely huge. And of those people, 1/5 of them are saying it's because of their debt to income ratio. So I'm going to cover some updates and policies that hopefully address that major problem. First, there was a set of regulation changes from Fannie Mae, and I think these changes really address these repayment issues, the repayment plan problems, on a multi-pronged approach. So there's 3 new additions, policy changes from Fannie Mae that we want to highlight for you. The first is a new kind of cash-out refinance option. So there's 8.5 million current homeowners who could be eligible to refinance, to pull equity out of their home to pay off their student loan. The way this new program would work is that Fannie Mae would not consider this an all-out cash-out transaction. So the loans, as long as they pay off a student loan, this new refinance, it will come with lower rates and easier qualifications. So this is really targeted at parents who are paying back student loans, or older borrowers who have their student loans who are unable to make, who are interested in using some of the equity in their home to pay off their student loans. And of course, we see often in these home loans a lower interest rate than what we see in the student loan, particularly the private student loan industry. So with that being said, I just want to address how this process works. So if at least one student loan is being paid off, and as long as the cash out is sent directly to a student loan provider and it pays off the loan in full, then a borrower can qualify for this program. So it really is aimed at completely squashing a long student loan debt with this really easy, lower cost refinance option. Now, I think some of the more exciting changes are related to folks who are really struggling to own their first home. This cash out refinance option is fantastic for those who are already settled in a home, but so many student loan borrowers are having trouble getting that far. So the second part of the Fannie Mae update is a change in the way they look at your debt to income ratio. So student loans, car loans, and credit card debt that someone else other than the borrower is paying will not be included in the debt to income ratio. So, a lot of parents have an agreement with their child that they'll pay off their child's student loans. Maybe you've got a personal agreement with your grandparents, whatever that may be. So when you go to the table to apply for a mortgage, they will no longer look at that student loan as long as someone has been paying that loan for you for the past 12 months. So, this can have huge implications for borrowers whose debt DTI are too high, and, who are in reality not actually making payments on their student loans because their parent or someone else has agreed to do so. So that's an exciting new change, particularly for students and student loan borrowers where these personal agreements are so common. This is a really important change. Now, the final change to policies at Fannie Mae is something that we've been calling for quite a while, and it was something that was part of the discussions we had during our webinars with NHRC last year. And that was a change to how IBR payments, what we call income-based repayments, are calculated. If you don't know what an income-based repayment is, you're not alone. That's why we host workshops to help borrowers learn about student loans. These are payments that help borrowers lower their monthly payments, and they're federal programs that are offered for free, and the payments are based on their income. So the lower a borrower's income, the lower their student loan payment can be. So previously in the past, when a lender went to create a mortgage, if the student loan payment was low, let's say even $0, they would calculate at least 2% of the original loan balance as your monthly obligation. So that, had huge implications for folks with high debt to income ratios. So that 2%, that what was once 1% of a borrower's loan balance can now actually be as low as $0. Whatever your income-based repayment program is, that will be the monthly requirement. So let me just be clear. If you're like me and your student loan monthly payment should be maybe $300, $400, $500 a month, you're likely enrolled in a federal program that makes your student loan much, much lower. And it can be as low as $0, like I mentioned. So in the past, instead of acknowledging that lower monthly payment, lenders were encouraged to calculate that obligation as being at least 1% of the original loan balance. That's out now. So now borrowers who have very low monthly payments because of these income-driven repayment plans will have a lower debt-to-income ratio and will hopefully qualify more easily. There are some important notes here, and I would encourage folks to learn more at Fannie Mae's website. They have a fantastic handout that we'll share with you. There are some qualifying factors, and one of them that we wanted to note for you was the impact of loans that are in deferment or forbearance. If you are, if you have a loan that's in forbearance or deferment, you are not going to qualify for some of these exclusionary programs. So please refer back to Fannie Mae's resources to get the details because there are going to be some unique student loan situations that will make qualifying for these new programs different for clients that you work with. Fannie Mae's not the only one. We're seeing updates from other folks that are designed to help student loan borrowers.
Could I just jump in for a quick second here, just on this stuff? So, I think we sent out the link this morning. The first of there were 4 links, and we sent out the link to the Fannie Mae paper so you could see that. Just to say, I think what isn't laid out there, but I think is the case, is that people will need to have enough equity in order to do the cash out refinance or purchasing the loan. It's not that it's above the regular LTV requirements that it has to fit into the regular LTV requirements that Fannie has. And then if you have somebody who's in deferment, what they do is they go back to the old rule of 1% of the unpaid balance is what they use for figuring out how to value it. So it's people in deferment can still get something like the cash out refinance, but they will need to have that put into their back end ratio. So anyways, keep going.
Yes, thank you so much, Bruce. That's why we lean on professionals and experts in the housing industry as well to really make sense of these complicated policies. So thank you very much. So Fannie Mae, they're not the only ones that are revising rules to hopefully help borrowers with student debt with high debt to income ratios. So there are some changes with FHA loans as well. HUD announced that deferred student loan payments would be calculated using a lower percentage. So this is a similar situation. Your loans are deferred, so technically your monthly payment would be, as low as $0. But for consideration of your monthly obligation, lenders were encouraged to consider the amount to be 2% of the total loan. That's been cut down to 1%. So that's a 50% reduction in the calculated student loan obligation for borrowers. So that's a great addition, a different change. And you can see that a lot of these rules are similar because they're all leaning towards the same goal, which is trying to address the complicated repayment plans and different totals that folks are paying on their student loans. This FHA rule is a great change. However, it does not address the issue that the Fannie Mae rules address, which is the income-driven repayment plans. So borrowers who are in income-driven repayment plans on their student loans that actually have much lower monthly payments are still going to be at that 1% obligation with these FHA loans. So there's some work to be done there as well. But still good progress in addressing some of these concerns related to student loans. And also, Freddie Mac, we see, again, another change to how these monthly loan obligations are calculated. They're actually going in at 0.5 percentage point of the original loan amount for folks who are in deferment. So we saw with that FHA rule that deferred student loans will be calculated at 1% of the original loan balance. We see Freddie Mac taking that down to 0.5%. So again, there is room for progress across the board. And also an interesting development as well with the Freddie Mac rules is that they're acknowledging that many student loan borrowers are on track for different types of loan forgiveness. There's teacher loan forgiveness programs, there's public service loan forgiveness programs, there's student loan discharge for disabled veterans. There's a litany of different federal programs designed to help borrowers have their debts canceled or forgiven. So Freddie Mac has developed a new rule set that says if a borrower is within 10 or less months away from loan forgiveness or discharge, that their current loan obligation won't be included in their debt to income ratio. So again, another creative approach to address how unique student loan programs impact borrowers. So those are the top rules that we've seen change since the last time we all connected. I think one thing that's worth flagging is that, in absence of strong protections on the federal level, states are really stepping up to help student loan borrowers purchase a home. There's programs in Ohio, New York, and Maryland that are all designed to specifically direct borrowers into a home and to address some of these problems as well. So with that, I would encourage all of you to please review that email that Bruce passed along and to view those links. There's a ton of great information directly from these sources. And it's really fresh information. These rules are, only several months old, some of them. So let me pass it off to Natalia Abrams. Natalia's going to cover some of the just general legislative updates that are impacting student loan borrowers today.
Thanks so much, Cody. I'll go through this quickly so we can get to your questions. So there's been a lot going on legislatively on the federal level, and we just want to talk about how that impacts student loan borrowers and some of the kind of small wins we've actually had along the way. So starting with the 2017 tax plan, while a lot of, we know that it added $1.5 trillion to the, added $1.5 trillion. It's not great for working and middle classes. There are some small wins for student loan borrowers. So we were able to save this student loan interest deduction that still exists for your clients. Graduate students, we were able to protect their tuition waivers. This is a small thing they were trying to make it if graduate students had their tuition covered from a tuition assistance program, that it would have been counted as income. So that did not happen. So interest deduction is still there, no tuition waiver. And, we feel that this is a great example of, the advocacy work you've all done and our supporters have done. Once this tax plan came out, we had over, I think our members took over 100,000 unique actions to really stop this. This led into the 2018 Omnibus Bill. And again, we saw they wanted to get rid of public service loan forgiveness. They wanted to end subsidized loans. They wanted to replace those income-driven repayment programs Cody was just speaking about. None of that happened. So again, borrowers were able to have a stay. I say momentarily because we're not quite out of the woods yet. One of the good things that or interesting things that came out of the Omnibus Bill was some more clarification on public service loan forgiveness. And they've actually funded, it's called the PSLF Fix. They added $350 million to expand this. It's very interesting. The details are still in the works. I just want to be clear on that. We're still waiting for advice from the Department of Education on exactly how they're going to implement this program. But basically, for student loan borrowers who have already been paying for 10 years and have 10 years of qualified public service that have direct student loans, basically, if they were in the incorrect repayment plan, if they were in extended or graduated repayment, yet they did everything else right for public service loan forgiveness, they may be able to have their loans forgiven. This is a small group of people, but we want to point this out in case any of these people come across your way where they feel that they've been wronged and they are entitled to public service loan forgiveness. Feel free to have them reach out to us or the Department of Education to figure out if they are the right candidate for this public service loan forgiveness fix. I wish I had more clarification on this. However, we're not getting that out of the department as of this moment. So that's the good news, what we've been able to protect. However, we're not, as I mentioned, we're not out of the woods quite yet. We have, Virginia Fox has what is called the Prosper Act. It's part of the higher education reauthorization process. And so in Fox's bill, they're still trying to eliminate public service loan forgiveness, replace current income-driven repayment programs, and subsidized loans. So we're seeing that same, what really started with the Trump-DeVos education budget keep coming up with the tax bill, omnibus bill, and now again with the Prosper Act. We don't, from what we're hearing, there's no guarantee this is even going to come to the floor this year, but it's something to keep an eye out for. If that were to pass, that could have big changes for your clients. An important thing to note here is, and I want to clarify, this is a rumor, we have no guarantees, but what we are hearing from the Department of Ed and from Treasury is that those who are enrolled in existing repayment programs or in public service loan forgiveness will be grandfathered in if they get rid of the programs or change them. Again, no guarantees, but that is what we're hearing. And I say that only that we continue to enroll people. It's the best thing for them. It's better than default, especially those that can't make their monthly payments. So, you know, we get asked this question all the time. Again, no guarantees, but we are hearing the rumor that they will be grandfathered in. And just lastly, Cody kind of touched on this, what states are doing now is taking action. So we have seen a large amount of states implement borrower bill of rights. There are now in California, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and various other states, there are state agencies that you can go to, like ombudsperson, to discuss student loan situations versus going to the federal government. We're happy, we can provide a link to like the states that have implemented this. However, they are trying to preempt this and get rid of the state laws. So another thing to pay attention to, this hasn't changed, and our attorneys generals are on top of this. More than 25 wrote the Department of Education demanding that this preemption does not happen. So with that, I'm going to stop because I know we're getting close to time, and open it up or send it back to Bruce and Matthew for questions.
So I know that we now have had a few people on the public service option have been able to actually do this. Have we learned anything? Is there something we should tell clients about how to prepare for that? Is there anything?
So we haven't found, we call it the unicorn. Many different organizations are trying to find those people that, from what our knowledge, it was less than 300 people that could have applied in October of 2017. But the biggest information is that finally we do have the appropriate form to fill out to apply for your forgiveness. Before October of last year, it was just the employee certification form that we encourage people to do yearly. The actual form is now out and downloadable at the Department of Education.
So you could send that to us and we could circulate it.
We can send that to you, absolutely.
Great. Okay, Matthew.
All right, and I just want to start by saying that you all are doing great work, and that is a lot of positive changes that have happened since we last spoke. So thank you all for all the hard work that you're doing on this. Most of these questions are going back, Cody, to the Fannie Mae part of the presentation. Just to clarify, I think you covered this, but Under the Fannie Mae program, IBR payments are used for DTI instead of the original balance calculations. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So in the past, lenders were required to assume that the payments were at least 1% of the original loan balance. But many borrowers have much lower payments because of their federal student loan repayment plan. So if you're in an income-based payment plan, they can now consider your actual monthly payment, which again can be as little as $0.
Great. And someone asked which lenders, so this is going back to the cash out refinance, which lenders would accommodate the refinance? Is there any restrictions on the lender?
I don't have the details on that, but I do think it's addressed in the Fannie Mae FAQ handout link. If I remember correctly, towards the end of it, they do address it. So I would steer listeners there, unless you have that to answer yourself, Bruce.
Great. And when you had talked about if somebody else had been paying your debt, is there any proof that's required to show that your debts are being paid by someone else?
So the way it's described from directly from the source is that the home buyer just simply needs to provide documentation that the debt has been paid for by another party for the past 12 months. So some sort of billing statements, and also with that is the requirement that you're making full monthly payments, and on time as well.
We could get Fannie to come and do a presentation on this, which sounds like let us know if there's enough interest here, but sounds like this is a hot topic. And thank you for sharing this. I actually wasn't aware of it myself. Go ahead.
And I think the last one on the Fannie Mae is, do you know, is the program already in effect, or if not, when it will go into effect?
It is my understanding that it was immediate, but I did not confirm that myself. So I would again refer just with Fannie Mae to look into this. As I said, a lot of these developments have been within the last couple of months, and certainly within the last year. So some of them are fresh and moving pretty dynamically.
Great. I'm going to give this question to Bruce, I think, and then Cody and Natalia, if you want to weigh in as well. A couple of people asked. The question is basically, even if these programs are helpful and you can use you have a better DTI, is it wise to be counseling people with a heavy student loan debt to be buying a house? So do you want to weigh in on that, Bruce?
Well, this is actually an excellent point, and the tools that so first is the tools that somebody has with a federal student loan, not a private loan, but with a federal student loan, are going to be much better than the tools you've got if you in the mortgage process. So to the extent that you run into trouble and have a loss of income, you are kind of sacrificing those. I think part of the message here is certainly if you have private loans, then you're certainly no worse off, and probably better off having that refinanced into your loan. And there's probably, for some people, there's going to be an interest rate advantage, plus you can write it off on your taxes. So I think, this is a sort of a judgment call, and some guess about what the future is. I think it's absolutely the right kind of question that people need to grapple with. I don't know if Cody or Natalia have any more thoughts on that.
I think it's very important to borrowers that they do own a home, mostly for the future success of their financial success. It's the number one way that Americans continue to build personal wealth, and it has major long-term implications if borrowers don't start off on the right track. I have to say, I'm a borrower who's also looking for a home and facing some of these challenges. So to see a light at the end of the tunnel and possibly some reprieve from the challenges, certainly encouraging. So
great. We just got the last couple questions. I know we're right at time. We're just going to go a few minutes over here. And And this question, I might be reading too much into it, but it seems like there might be some confusion here, so I kind of want to clear it up if there is. Someone asked if they need to consolidate their student loans in order to qualify for the Fannie Mae income-based repayment program. I'm just want to make sure that we're distinguishing. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
They're separate. There's income-based repayment from the federal government, the Department of Education for federal student loans only. And then there is this Fannie program. So for income-based or income-driven repayment programs, it really depends. You just need to have a federal loan to get the most generous options. It's usually best to consolidate to a newer direct loan. We are hosting our next round of webinars on Saturday, May 19th, and we'll be happy to provide that link as well, Bruce, if people want to refresh on their repayment education.
Oh, yeah, we should do that. Yeah.
And so, and so just to extend it out, once you've signed up through the federal income-driven repayment plan, that's when the Fannie program would be applicable to you.
Correct. And you can go to studentloans.gov to find out all of this information that we are discussing on income-driven repayment programs, consolidation, public service loan forgiveness. It's all there.
Great. And I think this is the last question, and maybe best for this person to reach out to you all directly, and maybe you can put, if you have the chat box and can chat with the audience, maybe it would be helpful to if you could put your email addresses, or we'll include it when we email the group later as well. But someone asked if it's true that a student loan is forgiven if it's over 20 years old.
So this is where the income-driven repayment programs come in. There is no technical statute of limitations for federal loans. However, if you are on an income-driven repayment program, depending on what type of program, your loans can be forgiven after 20 to 25 years of being in a repayment program. And that can be cut to 10 years if you are a public service worker in the public service loan forgiveness program.
And just to be crystal clear, any sort of forgiveness presupposes that you've been making regular payments.
And that you've been in a program. There is no immediate forgiveness or statute of limitations for federal loans.
Great. All right, that is all the questions. I'm going to kick it back over to Bruce.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate this, and let us know if we want to have Fannie on for a deeper dive on this particular product. But thanks so much, Cody and Natalia. You guys are great, doing good work. Thanks everybody for the call. Just a quick reminder about, if you haven't joined NHRC, would love to have you as part of the ranks. This is what gives us the independence, the ability to lobby. Our other funders don't really support lobbying, and so this is really what pays for all the work we're doing in Congress. We are surging ahead. We've had a major membership spike up. Thank you for all the new members. Obviously helped about the credit report discount, which is substantial through Credco, but also really like it when people join us because they think we're doing good work and doing the work that needs to get done. So please, I knew it was going to be a crowded call, so I didn't list off all the new members, but in a future call, we'll feature just a list of all the new memberships that have come in recently. But it's been great, and we are growing substantially. So if you haven't joined yet, please think seriously about it. Shoot me an email. I'll be glad to send you the application, and you can certainly find it on our website. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and haven't worked up the agenda yet for it, but I'm sure there'll be some good stuff. And we're definitely working on more on the innovations in housing counseling agenda. Thank you. A few people have responded about ideas on workforce and housing counseling, and healthcare and housing counseling could use some more in both spaces. And I think there's lots of creative work that everybody's doing, so we appreciate that a great deal. Thanks so much. Look out for an email if you sign the sign-on letter. There may be some wording changes to it in order to freshen it up, and working in conjunction with the National Association of Realtors on that. But keep up the good work. We appreciate what you're doing, and we'll stay in touch. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
So much.